Hello and welcome to Let's Be Real About It, where we are real about real life issues. I'm your host, Mildred Towns. And I have to give this disclaimer. This is a no holds barred zone. Therefore, some of the contents of the show may be offensive to some, but this is not the intent of the show. Before I introduce my guest for tonight, I want to introduce you to my book, Truth, My Closet Secrets Revealed, and my brochure, Hear Me a Cry from the Wound. My book is autobiography of some of the things that I have gone through in my life that I know if you get the book, it's going to totally change your life. And Hear Me a Cry from the Wound is for anyone of childbearing age who may be thinking about having an abortion. Before you have the abortion, before you go through with it, please email me at metowns at email me at iheartministries@gmail.com, and I will tell you how you can order the brochure as well as the book. Well, I want to introduce you to my special guest tonight. And again, before I introduce you to my special guest, I also want to thank my sponsors for the show tonight, J&K Style Grill in Virginia Beach, and also Zion City of Deliverance and the anonymous sponsor that we have. I want to thank you for sponsoring the show. And if there's anyone that the show have blessed and you want to be a sponsor of the show, please contact me at iheartministries@gmail.com. I want to go ahead and introduce my special guest for tonight, Tamika Jones. Welcome to the show, Tamika.
Hey, Miss Mildred, how are you?
I am well. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule and coming and being my guest for tonight. And for a topic, I'm going to use If My Feet Could Talk. Because within the time span that we have to tell your story, it's only a portion of your story. So if your feet could talk and tell the story and where your trail have been, your feet trail have been, it would tell us a whole lot more than you're going to put out tonight. So I thought that would be a good topic if my feet could talk. Also, I want to go ahead and introduce us to your book because you're an author now, and go ahead and introduce us to your book, Brutal Courage, and tell us about it.
Yes, I am an author on Brutal Courage. It is an anthology. So it's all about how we overcame traumatic experiences. It's about 25 or 30 of us, I think, that just share story, men and women, which you don't normally get a lot of men. So we were excited about that. But it just talks about courage, how to overcome. If you need any help dealing with things that you think people have never dealt with, um, then that's the book for you. I'm part of a Time to Tell movement, and we just think and agree that it's a time to tell because people are committing suicide, getting on drugs and different things, alcoholic addiction, trying to drown out their problems when other people has went through them and overcame. And so we just thought it was a time to tell and let people know that you can overcome. So it's several stories on adoption, uh, rape, divorce, just a lot of different traumatic experience coming from the small ones to the big ones. So that's what it's about, and it has been selling, and I love it. I love that I'm a part of it.
Yes, yes. Because I've been reading some of their stories in there, some great stories in there, along with yours, a lot of some of the other stories. I would advise you get the book, read some of these stories, see how these people overcame to even be able to tell these stories because some of them horrific, some of them traumatic. But yet they overcame, and now telling their story as well as you yourself. For those of you who don't know that Tamika graced my presence and I graced her presence in 2017. She came to a workshop that I was doing out in Atlanta. I heard ministries that I was doing for women who have been hurt, battered, and abused. And she came and told her story, well, one part of her story that she came and told. And here we are back again in 2021, and she's telling her story again in a greater degree. So tell us about Tamika.
Well, I am from Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm 42, just had a birthday a couple days ago. So I was born and raised there. I ended up moving here in Georgia about when I was about 13. And the beginning of my life was kind of funny because I was adopted, but didn't know until early on that my moms were friends, and they allowed, the adoption to take place, or for me to be raised by another person. But for me, it was real traumatic. I couldn't figure out like why I was the only one here, because I had three other sisters and things like that. And so Tamika is sitting here now, heel holds. I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a victor. And I'm a prayer warrior instead of a warrior. If y'all got that little piece. So I just try to I'm just sitting here with my business. I'm working every day, and I'm waiting on another book to come out in August. So that's what Tamika is doing right now.
All right. Well, tell us briefly. I know you was already talking some about your childhood, that you was adopted. So tell us about your childhood and being adopted, and about really not knowing who your dad is, and how did that affect your life?
Well, at first you just kind of be confused. So, like I said, I had three sisters, and then I'm like the only one that's gone in my mind. And so you grow up thinking like they having fun over there, they together. I didn't learn early on that they were separated here and there, and a lot of times God has a plan, you just don't understand it. But it was very traumatic for me at first, because I always wondered why. I wanted to be with my mom, and that's what a lot of people don't understand. When you're adopted and you're away from your biological parent, you kind of don't fit in where you are, especially if because you're always looking like, no wonder I don't act like these people. No wonder, So you kind of like be in your own bubble. And then the lady that raised me, she ended up having a son that had some small special needs, and so she was focused on him a lot. So I feel like I was kind of like just kind of left by myself, even though I had everything I needed. She taught me about Jesus, so it's definitely not a downplay on her part, but it was emotional. It was a very emotional, traumatic time, because once I got out of the plan that she had for my life and start rebelling and want to be with my mom and things like that, it became a verbal abuse. It became me getting verbally abused, emotionally abused. Sometimes not, I don't, people call it physical abuse now, but back in the day, your mom would take a shoe and throw it at you. So those kind of,
Mhm.
when I say physical abuse, that's what I mean. I don't mean, something huge, but nowadays you just can't knock your children out like you used to, but it started coming one of those things. And so even though that's a small thing to some people, I still want it out. So as far as I can remember, I was always running away, just kind of searching. And I just would run away and, find love from men. Um, I didn't even have a thought of like, let me find my dad, because I didn't care for anybody. I was just kind of like, just out there, didn't really care whether or not I knew who my dad was. I didn't know the importance of that until later on in life, but it definitely affects me because I don't even have a name. So, when you don't even have a name, you really don't have, I mean, that part of your life is just kind of like deleted. And so I kind of envy people with dads now. I'm like, how was that like? I always, and if you ask anybody that has a dad know me, I always be like, well, how was that? I sometimes wonder, would my life be different? Would my choice of men be different? Would my choice of the way I interact with men and opposite sex would be different? Because when I was younger, I feel like sex was my drug of choice. Because, we always feel like sex is love. We get it all confused. So that was part of my growing up. And so I guess I would say I'm talking about around 14, 13, 14 is when you kind of start thinking about these things and looking at everybody's life and realizing that yours is different.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I know you touched on this too, because there's a lot of teens out there that are runaway teens. So talk about being a runaway teen and what that was like for you.
Well, what happens is you don't intend to necessarily run away. What happens is you sneak out the window to go to a party or something, but then you're scared to go back home because you're gonna get a whooping, or they're gonna send you to, in my situation, I would end up going to a group home or going to an aunt's house, and you just kind of be labeled from then on, like, you, even if you're not having sex or being promiscuous at that time, that normally comes with it out there, because you got to eat. You know what I'm saying? So if you're really a true runaway and you in the streets, a lot of stuff come with that whole lifestyle. And I'm so happy that God has always had his hand on me, so as soon as I'm about to get really deep, he will pull me away. And so it just became one of those things where I may be gone for like a week or two at a time. Then I end up going to a group home, kind of getting my life together, going back home. And it's kind of like you see them little posts now. I hate it here. I always hated it there. So I would be back out the window. And normally, back out the window, you with a guy. And then 14 years old, I end up pregnant. So.
Yeah, so that's what I'm going to ask you about next. Um, Talk about your life as a young girl, and you mentioned being new in the city and living in the hood.
Yeah, when we was talking earlier, so my mom stayed kind of like in the hood. Well, my biological mom stayed kind of like in the hood, and my mom who raised me, we stayed more so in the city. It was a little bit more. I had a little bit more leash on me. I wasn't exposed to a lot of stuff until I would go to my real mom's house. But if anybody know that, that's where you want to be. That's where the fun is. It's kind of like when you live in the suburbs and you got an auntie that stay in the projects. You want to be in the projects because that's where it's happening at. And so I kind of like wanted that kind of lifestyle, even though it's a little scary because I wasn't, my sisters, they're very like, because they was raised downtown, they're very like ready to fight, know what's going on, know what drugs to do, what not to do, know how to get money and have money even as a young kid. I didn't know nothing about that. So when I came into their world, it was exciting and I didn't want to leave that. But when I got turned 13, the mom that I was living with ended up moving to Georgia because her mom was sick. And so I kind of just got pulled away, which as an adult now, that probably was a good thing. But, I kind of got pulled away and I kind of moved into a suburban area where I got moved to in Georgia. So it was kind of like, it's just a different world, just a different world.
So now you two, uh, you talked about being rebellious, and as a teen, and you call yourself a Cincinnati Hope. So talk on that.
Well, that's what when I moved to the city that I moved into when I was 13 or 14, that's what people labeled me as because again, I was out the window, I was at the clubs dancing, just doing whatever I was doing. Even when I wasn't being promiscuous, it's just that, oh, she from Cincinnati, so she the Cincinnati hoe. And it kind of stuck with me like maybe 2 or 3 years until I ended up going to jail. But it kind of stuck with me 2 or 3 years, whether it was true or not. And you tend to like you still have to live your life. So as you be with these guys and they teenagers, as you be with these guys and things like that, it just kind of stick with you. And so, you feel bad about it, but you don't know how to really combat it because you're just simply living like other people. But I don't know if you ever experienced this and know people, but you'll have some guys that say they slept with you and didn't. You have some guys that say you did this, but you really didn't. And it's hard to like combat that when you are doing that with somebody else, and you are
Yeah.
young and I am new. And so it's kind of like I was, just a new girl in a small city, that everybody pretty much wanted. I was just, it's just different. And when you're different, men tend to flock to you. I would say boys tend to flock to you. And it's hard to say no. It's hard to run away from that when you want love and you associate sex with love and things like that. So it was just a trying time for me. And I remember I mentioned that to you because that was the one of the things that I had to deny myself of as I got older. I'm not a whore. I'm not a Cincinnati hoe. I am who God says I am. And so I
Mhm.
had to change that narrative for myself. So that's what my reasoning for mentioning that was that you have to choose to take labels off of you as you get older and you learn to do better and you learn to know better and you find out who what's your self worth and things like that. So that's that.
So talk about at the age of, was it 13 or 14, that you get pregnant, you had a daughter, and you felt as though you finally had someone that will love you.
Yeah, so I found myself 14 and pregnant, and it was so weird because the mom that I was raised with, she was a Christian, hypocritical to me, knowing what I know now. But she instantly called my mom. At this point I had no idea that she was even in contact with my biological mom. So it really pissed me off that she would call her immediately. So I was shipped to Cincinnati. It was just kind of like, oh, she done got pregnant. She had disgraced to the church. I remember them putting me out the choir because my
What?
mom always had us in church, so I knew who God was early on, and I sung in the choir, went to vacation Bible school, and all that good stuff. She tried to keep us on a narrow path, and I remember getting pregnant, getting kicked out the choir, kind of getting just scrutinized for just making a mistake, I guess I would say. And I felt like my daughter would bring the love that I needed to my life, but then you have so many people in the hands of your one little welfare check or whatever, so it just becomes like, oh, this is somebody else we can capitalize of. So you don't really, as a 14 and 15 year old, I had it when I was 15, so you don't really have a say so in what's going on. First of all, you don't know what to say, how to do, where to go, what to get. All you know is you better take your butt to school or you going to work. So I end up working. But long after that, she called my biological mom and told her I was pregnant. So I went up there. Well, I went up there. I called my mom and said, "Mom, you got a house for us?" I'm used to living in a house in the suburbs, nice area. It was no, at this point, it was no drugs in my house. There was no, none of that. And so when I got up there, my mom was staying in the shelter. I
Wow.
couldn't take it. I ran away from there. It just, my mom was staying in the shelter. So that means my sister, we were staying in the shelter. They were staying downtown. They were staying in school. I think I want to say the first week or two of school, a month I was there, somebody got shot in the head on the playground. I was like, oh, heck no. I got to go. So I ran away from there. I ran back to Georgia. But of course, I ran back to Georgia to the same thing. And it was even worse now because I was feeling like, basically, I started running away with my daughter, being with a boyfriend. He was a little bit better, but I started being with a boyfriend and staying in the hotel with him and just making all these crazy decisions with my daughter. And I realized I couldn't do that. And so I had to take my mom up on her offer to help me with my daughter and kind of like, bow down and give her a little bit more leeway with my child. And that's what I did. But I didn't like that, so I was running away again. I was back in the streets. And when I say in the streets, I'm still going to school. I still, if it's something going on like vacation Bible or something, because I like people and social connections and I do like positivity. I was never a negative. I just could not challenge my emotional trauma. I just couldn't figure out, I didn't have anybody to have an outlet. And so I remember when I was young, I used to always be in counseling. Even when so at this time, I'm a ward of the state. So they have counseling sessions, all that, but nobody's listening to you. Nobody really hears what you're saying. You going through the motions because your mama told you to. But nobody's really understanding. And even if they did, you in your mind feel like nobody's gonna say what I'm saying. Nobody's gonna get me. So yeah.
Wow. So I want you to talk about too getting involved in an abusive relationship. You call it a toxic uh, relationship at the age of 15 that cost you 3 years.
So what happened was I met this guy in the streets at the we call it the Legion. That's where everything go down. It's the parties every weekend. And so I ended up meeting this guy. He wasn't much older. I think I was 16. He might have been 19, 18, 19. So he wasn't much older, but he was, just he was a little bit more street savvy. I would say that. Not so much as like 25, but he just knew a little bit. He stayed on like one of the worst streets. I wouldn't call the street's name, but he stayed on like one of the worst streets. So everything was going down on that street. And so I just became a part of his world. And I didn't know he was abusive until I was working at Wendy's, and he would like kind of sneak and be behind the trees while walking home. So that's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you watching me? And at the time, Lord forbid, we didn't have phones because people would have definitely, that's how people get caught cheating and all kind of stuff now. But back then, they will follow you. They will pick you up. They're going to drop you off. They showing up where you are. You don't even know they're there. So it was those kind of things. But at the time, I had been so long in the streets and had been the mom I should have been. And I was too scared to go back home. And so the fight started. If I was talking to somebody too long, if I was gone too long, if I said I was going to work and hang out there by a certain time, if I didn't want to have sex, there was a fight. Everything was a fight with him. And so what happens is you get tired of it. You
Mm-hmm.
start feeling like, because he would go to jail for like disturbing the peace, because that's what they call it. Like, it's not necessarily domestic violence because we were young. So it's like disturbing the peace. He's drunk or he's high or something like that. And so he would get locked up. I'll be free for a couple of days, and then when he come back, still in this couple of days, I'm with a different guy, scared to go home. Because I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know what my mama gonna do because I'm still a minor. My mama gonna have me leave my child, go to jail. I end up going to jail anyway, but she had me. I didn't plan to go into that because I'm like, what I'm gonna have to face when I go home. And so it ended up resulting into, for my 16th birthday, he ended up shooting at me like 16 times with a
Wow.
gun. Like at my feet, I'm doing a whole dance. I'm like, what? And it's funny now because I couldn't believe I was even in that situation, or even to allow to love somebody or think that I can love somebody at that time. And he would just fight me, kick me in my stomach, hit me with bats, like whoop me with a belt, different things like that, or take a switch. You know how it's like not a regular switch, but like a thick, it's not I won't say big as a branch, but just something with some little ends of branches on it. And, like while we walking on the street, because we didn't have a car, while we walking, he'll just torment me or hit my legs. And I'm just like, stop playing. But it's not playing. It's abuse. It's
Mm-hmm.
about abuse, power, control. But you don't even get that because I was so young. And so it resulted in me, I got pregnant, and I was going to tell him that I was pregnant, but I was so sick. We got into a fight. This not the night that I stabbed him, but we got into a fight, and he tore my placenta. He kicked me in my stomach and ripped my placenta, so I was leaking. I had to go to the doctor, and my placenta was leaking, and so when I got ready, I had a restraining order against him at this time, so I was at home or something, and I ended up going. This is 1996, so it's a little shabby, but when I was going to tell him that, I'm not, he was like, I want to see you. Basically, I want to see you, come to the house. And I'm like, well, we ain't supposed to be together, a restraining order. But, by this time, you play the game. Like, whatever's going to make him happy, you play that game. And you kind of do whatever he says. So, of course, he wanted me to come there. But I end up going there and trying to tell him, like, I'm pregnant, I'm leaking. Of course, he get there, he want to have sex because he ain't seen me in a couple of days. At this time, probably been like 6 to 7 days. And I'm like, no, no, no. So he forcibly has sex. That's rape. So everybody always asks me, do you think your boyfriend can rape you, or you can be married and get raped? Yes, you can, because if your body is not responding, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
In a good way to say it. It just doesn't feel good. You're not happy. Your body is shutting down. Everything is tightening up. You tensed up. It doesn't feel good. And so that's rape. And so that happened. And I kept telling him, I'm like, well, my placenta is leaking. I can't. We ended up fighting. He hit me in the head with an iron and knocked me out. I was in the room where his sisters, I guess, in sleep anyway. And I don't know, I don't know if she was peeling the orange or whatever, but it was a knife in there. So when I got out, we ended up getting a scuff when I stabbed him in the shoulder. And he died. I mean, it was one of them things where it was a choice I felt I had to make that I didn't have no choice but to make. And so, I'm running home. I didn't stay far. And I probably played 2 or 3 blocks over, down the street, around the hill, whatever. But when you in flight or fight, I felt like it was right around the corner. So I ran home and I'm knocking on the door and I'm like, Mom, I just had to get to my daughter. Because I knew I was going to jail. And I heard the words, I heard sirens because it was close. I heard sirens and I knew they was coming for me. And so I just had enough time to like hug my child. And I heard the words DOA, and I knew from TV, because I'm a kid, that's what that means, dead on arrival. So here I am, just 16, and just killed the guy. So it's just not registering. You just don't understand. You're like, I'm 4'11", I'm 150 pounds. Like, how is this happening? Like, I mean, I stabbed him one time in the shoulder. It wasn't even like a malice. I don't know what I mean when I say this, but it wasn't even a malice stab, and it's not like something you see on TV where it's like just angry. It was more so I'm hurt, I'm tired. And I honestly feel like in that one stab, it was like for everybody that hurt me. It was like for the abuse from wherever, however, whenever. It was just a whole release, and and I felt so bad about it. That's definitely is not what I meant to do. It's just a sad situation. You're 16. I was, when I had November, so I think I was 5 months pregnant with a torn placenta, in jail, in a holding cell, and they telling you that you in here for murder. What do you do?
Girl, I can only imagine.
What do you do? And it's like, you're in a small city, and it was about 10 of them. He had like, I mean, I can't even remember, because I've asked God to take that part of my life away from me, because I'm no longer involved in it. I'm no longer that person. I no longer even allowed it in my life. So I don't really know, but I think if I'm not mistaken, he had about 5 or 6 sisters and brothers. So I just knew. And they even told me, even within the jail, sometimes you get time for your safety. Because if we let you back out in the streets, you're going to be dead. So it was just one of those times where you just like, I cannot believe this happened. And, you go through the motions. You want to die. You want to die because you took somebody's life for one. You don't even know how to explain it to yourself, your parent, their parent. You just sad because you realize, you start thinking about, what all the parent has done for you, how many times you ate at their table, you know, and things like that, and how good of a person you are, how good people see you, you know, and now people really see you. You know what I'm saying? So whatever the you that they saw, you can scratch that because they only see you for what is happening now. We live in it now. And so it was very scary. I basically was facing 20 years. When I first heard anything, it was like 20 years do 7. And the ironic thing is, the next day, my mom, my biological mom, came down from Cincinnati and visited me. I'm like, where you been? You know, you just be like, I needed you. Like, maybe all this wouldn't happen if I had, if I hadn't been here. There, you just, you start doing the blame game. And I trust me, both my moms are forgiven. Whatever happened, they're forgiven. But I'm just saying, at the time, you're doing a blame game. You're just trying to figure out, like, how did I even get here? It's all your fault, type of thing. So I had to put my big girl panties on, and I had to reach back to that God and say, God, I need you. I need you like today. Like, I want to die. Just come get me, because I can't live. I don't even know how to eat. I couldn't sleep. And it's so weird because I think that song, or Kelly's song, it came out with that, and I would sing it over. It would replay in my head because I really could not eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think. I couldn't do anything. And I did not know it during the time that I was waiting on trials or plea bargains or whatever the case. My biological mom took my daughter that was already born. Now, mind you, I haven't lived with her. The last I heard of her living, she was in a shelter, so there was absolutely, positively a negative in my mind. Even though my mom who raised me needed it, because she didn't have a nervous breakdown. Like, what do I do? Where do I go? How do I what? So she called herself helping then. I didn't like it. And at the time, my daughter's dad was in jail. He had like 30, 40 years, and he didn't kill anybody, but he had years. So here I am. So my daughter had nobody. So all of this is like a dump on you while you're sitting there, and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, and Tamika, and we're gonna take that up in part 2, the rest of that in part 2. But I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and being transparent with your story, because I know so many people are going to be blessed, because there's so many people that right now is in the midst of going through all that you have already gone through and overcome. So Tamika, tell everyone how they can order your book and how to contact you.
Okay, you can go on Amazon and order my book. It's under Tamika Jones, Brutal Courage, the remix. It is the remix because it's a brutal courage by itself. So you have to put in Brutal Courage, the remix. I am on Facebook at Tamika Edwards. I am everywhere with Adorned by Mimi because I sell jewelry. So you can find me anywhere. My email is Tamika. Well, she just put it up on the screen. Tamika Edwards Jones at Gmail. If you have any questions, if you're a teen mom, if you're going through it, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I am sitting here healed and whole, and I want everybody to be healed and whole. And I want them to know that God loves you. He is here for all of us. And if you allow him, he'll put his hand on you and help you direct your path if you let him. So please reach out to me if you have any questions on how to get from A to B.
Yes, and I want you all to tune in next week for part 2 of Tamika's story. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel, I Heard Ministries, Saturday 4.22, guest towns, and follow us on Roku on our Brothers Keepers channel, as well as Amazon Fire Stick. And I just want to thank all of those who watch the show nationally and internationally. And I would love to hear from you. Please email me at iheardministries@gmail.com to let me know if the show has been a blessing to you. And until next week, let the peace of God reign, rule, and abide in your hearts. I'm Mildred Towns. Thank you for watching.